Hi everybody, this is Lee, and you might notice some changes with my camera. The watermark is gone, and I think some of you won't miss it. Anyway, my computer is just, my system here is just on its last legs, and I had to jigger around with it and, find some alternatives. So I'm going to ride it till the wheels fall off, and they're about to. But anyway, here I am, and I did a test run, and I believe my camera is working. I'm talking about people who are running for office down ballot. I think that's great if you are, and that it's very important that if you are a progressive, that you leave no stone unturned, and that if you assisted Bernie Sanders on his 2016 primary run, if you assisted Jill Stein with her 2016 general election run, if you even were a part of the movement to attempt to draft Bernie Sanders in 2017, that the time has come for you to consider running for office yourself. That now is the time that you've got experience with campaigning, with petitioning, with communicating, with fundraising, soliciting support, and communicating a message that you've done some research and you've got some great ideas. And so probably the next step is not to attempt to recruit another figurehead. The best step is for you yourself to become your own figurehead, to be the change. And that Bernie Sanders was very clear about that. He said, it's not about me, it's about the progressive movement. It's not about Bernie Sanders, he told you himself. And that even while he is in the Senate attempting to get legislation passed, and that he's traveling the country lobbying for progressive legislation, that he needs help. He can't do it by himself. You can't really say, Bernie, save us. That he's told you he needs you to help him. And that means you run for office. That he explained how he obtained his mayoralship in Burlington, Vermont. It wasn't on the first try. That he ran for several offices before he became mayor of Vermont. And he admitted, mayor of Burlington, Vermont. And he admitted that at first he wasn't completely sure what he was doing, but he learned his job. And he learned it enough to the point where the people had faith in him to send him into the U.S. House. And then he learned that job. And people expressed faith in him to send him into U.S. Senate. And then he learned that job. And he's doing great. And people had faith enough to nearly send him into the presidency. And so you never know the places that you'll go, but you have to be the change. You can't look for someone to be the change for you. It's fine to, campaign and support, but when the time comes, you have to step up for yourself. And so I would encourage that, not only to be part of the progressive movement to help build that machine, so that when you build that machine, the next time a figurehead does come, and believe me, if you build it, the figurehead will come. You won't have to look for them. They'll find you. You won't have to recruit them. They'll come find you and ask you to support their run. But if you build the machine, the figurehead will come. But building a machine means that you run for office. And that if you do put yourself into position to where you can affect the machine electorally, whether it's city council, state legislature, whether it's a county position, or secretary of state, county clerk, school board, land commission, water commission, no stone unturned. Even if it's soil and water commission, you might not want to underestimate your ability to stop a company from coming in and fracking and polluting your entire community. That's how important those positions are, and that they're stepping stones. That, of course, you can remain in that position and protect your community, and then you can also use it as a training ground to ascend into higher office, as some people do. And then you will find yourself leaving the state legislature and becoming either a U.S. senator or a U.S. Representative, and then who knows the places you'll go after that. So it's step after step, and that this is how it happened during the time of the founding of the Republican Party. We had all these loose factions who, for varying reasons, wanted to change a very perverse and twisted and immoral economic system that was no longer viable, that it was actually holding back the fortunes of the United States. And it was becoming a moral issue, that it was actually degrading even the slaveholder as it degraded the slave. And people wanted to change that. Some because they didn't like black people and didn't want to live around them. So they wanted to abolish slavery in their state. So they didn't want to have to look at black people. That was, the motivation on that side. And then you had religious folks like Quakers who found that slavery was an abomination to their religious practices, and for that reason they wanted to abolish slavery. And then you had free men and women of color, and they were abolitionists, such as Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, William Garrison, who said that the human rights abuses, the civil rights abuses, are vulgar and basically a degradation upon the entire nation, and it lowers the standing of the United States within the world, and they wanted to abolish slavery. So varying motivations, people, for a full range of reasons, wanted to abolish slavery and stop the expansion of slavery into the territories like Nebraska, Kansas, Oregon, places like that. Certainly California. They did not want California to be a slave state. And so you had, this war of ideas, and that eventually the majority of the population wanted to abolish slavery, again, for various reasons. And so they did not recruit a figurehead for the presidency. What they did was begin sending candidates into elective office down ballot at the grassroots level. They won governorships, they won U.S. House seats, and they eventually began to win U.S. Senate seats, until they became organized enough around the idea, not around a personality, not around a man, not around someone they considered their grandpa. They organized around the idea of abolishing slavery, of calling a halt to a twisted and perverse, immoral economic system. This is the idea that kick-started or launched the Republican Party. And after there were candidates in office from these varying parties and these varying factions, they began to coalesce underneath the umbrella of the Republican Party. And then they began to recruit a presidential candidate, John Fremont. And his slogan was Fremont, free labor, free soil, free men. And then, he ran for office. He did not win, but he had a coattail effect to where even more Republican candidates won office. And so he was able to use his candidacy to coattail more down ballot candidates into positions of political power where they were able to establish numbers. So the Republican Party began to post up numbers at the federal level, but also at the state level too. And they were able to, campaign across the nation and spread the idea of abolishing slavery and certainly stopping the expansion into the free territories. And so, even while people were working within the economic system, you also had people fighting on the ground in the state of Kansas. You had ordinary citizens openly defying the fugitive slave law. They actually worked against the fugitive slave law and refused to cooperate with it. So they were lawbreakers, just like the Boston Tea Partiers. They actually did break the law in order to express discontent and to express dissent against a law that was designed to uphold a perverse system. They refused to go along with it. And then you had John Brown getting buck wild in Virginia, who actually started an insurrection. And this is as far as 1859, the year before Abraham Lincoln was recruited and won as the president of the United States, the first Republican president of the United States. So you have people working within the system at the grassroots level, and then you have people outside the system fighting and agitating outside the system at the grassroots level against this economic system that had to stop. And so, for those who want to work within the system and you want to win, the battle of ideas, pattern after Bernie Sanders, pattern after Jill Stein, or Shama Sawant, or Tulsi Gabbard, or whoever you're basing your philosophy on, that you can do that. You can use them as, motivation or education, but don't look to them to solve your city, state, and local problems for you, that you have to run for office. And then campaign for yourself, network for yourself, fundraise for yourself, believe in yourself to win your office, and then become part of the machine that you build. And so the next time there is a figurehead that makes a run at the presidency, Bernie Sanders attempted, but he found obstacles at the state and local level. You can be the change that smooths those gears for the next time there's a figurehead that comes along. If you build it, the figurehead will come. You won't have to ask them or petition them or, encourage them or, emotionally blackmail them into being your figurehead. They will volunteer. They will ask you, can you support me? Am I run because I believe in all these things too, and I'm going to make an attempt at the presidency. And if you played your cards right, not only did you get a health care package for yourself as a government employee representing your state or your city or district, but you also put yourself in a position where you're able to at least afford a fair hearing and a fair treatment of the figurehead that comes to jumpstart another economic revolution and recapture our country back from multinational corporations who are attempting to basically treat humans like animals and have themselves as corporations take over as the humans. I mean, that's what it seems like. We've got corporations that are considered humans, and then the humans are treated like animals, in the eyes of the law, and that's crazy. So definitely time for another economic revolution, and that you need to be the change, and that you can be the change. If you meet those deadlines, submit those petitions for yourself, fill out the forms for yourself, hold a town hall for yourself, get on social media for yourself, and you be the change. You be the figurehead, and you be the one that starts a revolution. Good luck.